Greetings, all of you beautiful embers. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. I bet you thought I forgot about you. No. Happy 2023. I hope the new year is bringing you as much happiness and joy as it can possibly bring you. At least for now. We still have another 300 plus something odd days to get through. So anyway, with that being said, I'm coming back at you with another compilation video and more of those spine-tingling chills that you all love. Let's get started, shall we? Every story written in this compilation was written by Kronik Nightmares. This story is entitled The Abandoned Ones. Throughout the 19th century, Ashford Orphanage was a place where mothers would bring their undesirable offspring, children afflicted with deformities, and a broad array of mental problems, all of them brought there to be forgotten. By the 1920s, the orphanage was closed down due to their poor conditions the children were living in, and reports suggested that the kids were also subjected to horrific abuse. According to Daniel Glover, who exposed Ashford Orphanage, he claimed all of the children were emaciated, and he had even observed some of them eating rats. I was also intrigued by the history of Ashford Orphanage. I read all of the books and spent sleepless nights researching about it. You could say I was a little obsessed. I just had a feeling that something wasn't right, like the whole puzzle hadn't been pieced together yet. And my suspicions were proven correct. When I stumbled upon a copy of the original blueprint for the orphanage, I noticed a secret room, something I had never read about anywhere. Out of all the books and research, I had never seen one mention a secret room in the cellar. What could be in that room? My curiosity got the better of me, and I drove the 3-hour journey to the abandoned orphanage. The orphanage appeared much larger than I expected as I parked outside. The building had a somewhat gothic appearance, with black stone and 2 gargoyles perched atop the roof. I felt a strange, uneasy feeling, like I could feel sadness and despair being emanated from the building itself. As I approached the door, I heard something faint. It sounded like a child crying. My heart was racing, but I continued on. After all, I was on a mission. I had to find out what was in that hidden room. I climbed in through the downstairs window and then proceeded to make my way down into the cellar. The cellar had a damp smell to it, and the walls were covered in mold. I pulled up the blueprint on my phone and then made my way over to the wall, which was hiding the room. I noticed a breeze coming from the cracks in the brittle-looking wall. I tested the wall with a knock. It was indeed hollow. With 2 hard knocks, the wall gave in. I turned my phone's flashlight on and stepped into the pitch-black room. The smell was horrendous, like meat left to rot. That's when I saw it. The heap in the corner of the room. I thought it was piled furniture at first, but when I shone the torch on it, I was horrified. It wasn't furniture. It was the skeletal remains of children. They were all huddled up together, embracing each other tightly. Then I saw something written on the wall in a child's handwriting. It was written in chalk. I shone the torch onto it. We are the abandoned ones. Nobody loves us. The story is entitled The Kingdom of the Blind. My new subjects knew nothing of gratitude. They did not appreciate the privilege I bestowed upon them. I could have killed every last citizen if I wanted to. After all, I had won. It was I who emerged victorious from the battle, but there was no need for more bloodshed. Enough has been spilt. All I asked was for worship, and all I got in return was rebellion. Then came the attempts to kill me, one of which caused me to lose an eye. Some filthy peasant got a lucky hit with an arrow. Unlucky for him, I lived. And after I flayed that bastard alive, I decided to make an example of everyone else. They were all going to pay the price for their rebellion. I had my men gather every citizen and line them all up. Once that was accomplished, I then ordered for every eyeball to be removed. Our local blacksmith even made a special tool for the job, upon my request, of course. He called it the eye pick, a rather fitting name too, if you ask me. Watching the tool in action was quite the sight to behold. The screams permeated far beyond the thick stone walls. I was sure. The eye pick removes the eyes with absolute ease. Just push the iron spike into the eye, then give it a little pull, and pop, out comes the eyeball, followed by a gush of blood. And once every man, woman, and child had been blinded, only then did I feel that true justice had been served. And the lesson was indeed learned, as rebellion completely stopped, and my subjects became nothing more than blind workhorses with a newfound sense of loyalty to me. As the decades passed and my hair grayed, I watched with great interest as a new culture formed among the peasants. They had grown accustomed to their blindness, and it was even easier for children to adjust after having their eyes removed at birth. It was at this moment that the realization hit me, something that changed my outlook on everything. Sight was a privilege, and it took too long for me to understand this. In my new enlightened state, I ordered my entire army in close circle to remove their own eyes in devotion to me. Some refused, even going so far to call me mad. I had them boiled alive. The ones who did cooperate found a place within my paradise. Now, I sit upon my throne, with my loyal subjects knelt beneath me. A smile forms on my lips as a thought comes into my mind, something that holds a lot of truth. In the kingdom of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. The story is entitled, He Who Dwells Within the Dollhouse. Lily sat cross-legged on the carpeted floor of her bedroom, listening to her parents screaming at each other downstairs. The curtains were closed and the light was off. Her room completely pitch black, only faintly illuminated by a single candle that sat directly in front of her, right next to the pink wooden dollhouse on the floor. It was almost midnight, and Lily picked up the candle and gently placed it inside the dollhouse. Tears flowed down her cheeks as she waited for the sound of the grandfather clock in the front room, signaling that it was 12 o'clock. Then it came. The melodic chime echoed throughout the house. Lily wiped the tears from her eyes and proceeded to grab the knife that had been sitting in her bed.
He who dwells within the dollhouse, hear my cry. I summon you and beg of you to release me from this torment. Grant me paradise within your domain,
Lily said loudly before slicing her wrists with the blade. She watched as the flame of the candle danced and flickered, as if caught in a strong breeze. Her vision became foggy, and her body was growing weaker by the second. Then, the candle suddenly went out, and Lily found just enough energy to produce a wide smile as she dragged the blade across her throat.
Thank you,
she gargled before dying. Her mother found Lily's body in a pool of blood the next morning after she hadn't come downstairs for breakfast. She screamed, and when her father rushed upstairs and saw his daughter's blood-stained corpse, he dropped to his knees, crying. They blamed each other for her death, and within 2 months, they got a divorce. 10 years passed, and Lily's father had long since died from liver failure due to his alcoholism that only got worse after his daughter's suicide. Her now gray-haired mother sat in her armchair alone, thinking about happier times, thinking about the dollhouse that Lily had loved so much. She always said she wanted to live inside it. She even used to claim she had a friend who dwelled within, as she liked to put it, and she remembered often hearing Lily seemingly speaking to herself in her bedroom. She thought nothing of the dollhouse at the time. In fact, she hadn't thought about it in a long time. She got up from the chair, and without truly knowing why, she made her way up to Lily's room, a room she hadn't been in since that day. The door creaked open, and she had to prepare herself before entering. She hesitantly entered the room, the dollhouse still untouched on the floor, completely covered in spider webs. But something caught her eye, something standing inside the dollhouse. She reached in and grabbed the delicate little doll. She was certain it wasn't there before, and upon closer inspection, she noticed something about the doll. It looked just like Lily. This story is entitled, "My Sister Has Been Rotting in the Living Room for 2 Weeks." 2 weeks ago, my little sister Becky had an asthma attack. Her inhalers were not helping, and Mom tried everything she could to save her. I'll never forget that look on Becky's face as she struggled for breath, or the way that she scratched at her throat desperately before finally her panicked eyes rolled into the back of her skull in defeat. She died on the living room floor, cradled in my mother's arms. Mom didn't call an ambulance. She didn't do anything. She just held Becky's lifeless body tightly and cried. I decided that I would call the ambulance myself, but as soon as Mom saw the phone in my hand, she got mad.
"Don't you dare!"
she screamed before holding her hand out.
"Give me the phone!"
I should have called an ambulance, but I was scared of the insanity in my mother's eyes, like she was about to explode at any moment. I reluctantly handed the phone over to her. Then I was sent up to my room. I didn't sleep at all that night. I just laid in bed, completely in shock, as I attempted to fight back tears, but they soon came flooding anyway when the realization hit me. Becky's dead, and I'm never going to see her again. The next morning, I went downstairs and heard the television blaring loudly from the living room. I slowly made my way towards the sound, and I was not prepared for what I was about to see. Paw Patrol was playing on the TV as Becky's pale body was propped up on the sofa, watching her favorite show. Her eyelids had been crudely stitched to her forehead so that her white eyes would stay open. She almost looked like a doll with how rigid she sat upright on the sofa. Mom walked in and greeted me with a smile.
"Good morning, sweetheart,"
she said before kissing me on the cheek.
Sit down with your sister, and I'll go make you a nice cup of tea."
I lost it at that point and told her how crazy it all was, and that Becky wasn't alive anymore. But then Mom slapped me so hard that she busted my lip. I didn't argue with her anymore after that. The days went by and the smell of decay got worse. Becky's decomposing body never moved from the sofa, and Paw Patrol never stopped playing. But that was weeks ago now. I can't even go into the living room anymore. I can't bear to see the maggots squirming around inside her empty eye sockets, or the rotten skin falling from her decayed, larva-covered flesh. Mom has gotten worse too. Not only is she still in her happy family fantasy, but she has also boarded up all the windows and has installed new locks on the front door. I'm not allowed outside anymore either, and it's driving me mad. I don't know how many more brother-sister bonding activities I can take. This last and final story is entitled, My Wife Has Gone Insane. My wife, Clarissa, and I have been happily married for almost 10 years, and those years have been the happiest of my life. I love her more than anything. I really do. But recently she has, without a better word for it, gone absolutely fucking batshit insane. It came on so suddenly too. She was completely fine yesterday, just her usual, never a serious moment, self. She had a silly sense of humor and she would laugh at the most ridiculous things. But that was why I loved her. There was never a day she wasn't smiling and telling me that she loved me. Our marriage right up to this point had been happy, and we still had that spark in the bedroom too. But when I woke up this morning, I was in utter disbelief. The once pristine white walls of our bedroom were now covered in all kinds of words and psychotic ramblings, which were unmistakably written in Clarissa's handwriting. Stuff like, always watching us, and I see them now. But the one that sent shivers up my spine was, they see me too. Then I heard Clarissa whistling from downstairs in the kitchen. At this point, I was getting a little freaked out. I went downstairs, dreading what I was going to see, and my mind could have not even comprehended what I was about to witness in the kitchen. My wife was standing at the kitchen counter with a knife firmly in her grip. She was cutting off 2 of her fingers on the blood-soaked chopping board and then carefully dicing them up like carrots. They made a sickening crunching sound as the sharp knife broke through the bone. She turned around and smiled widely at me, seemingly not feeling any pain at all. All I could see in her eyes was a dead, vacant stare.
I'm making some breakfast. Hope you're hungry,
Clarissa said as she threw the diced up fingers into a pan with some olive oil, producing a distant sizzling sound. What the fuck are you doing? I shouted, my face a portrait of shock and horror. Clarissa began laughing hysterically before suddenly stopping and going still, like somebody had hit the pause button in her brain. The silence was excruciating. Then suddenly breaking the silence, she spoke.
I am making you some breakfast before we head off on our journey together,
Clarissa said, shaking the finger slices around in the pan.
Smells like it's almost done, too.
What are you talking about? I said, having to look away from her 2 bloody stumps to avoid being sick.
We are going to the dark place, and then the shadows will guide us to paradise,
Clarissa said with excitement in her voice. I had failed to see them at first when I entered the kitchen, but sitting on the table were 2 ropes. Both were tied into nooses. And that concludes this round of some horrific tales written by the masterminded Kronik Nightmares. I hope you all have enjoyed, and I hope you have all had a great start to the brand new year. With that being said, as I always like to say, when life gives you fire, become a phoenix. Stay safe out there, take care of one another, and always, I'll be reading to you soon.